Welcome back to Real Clear Radio Hour, brought to you by the Competitive Enterprise Institute. I'm your host, Bill Frezza. For the second half of our show, we grabbed another speaker here at the Young Americans for Liberty Convention for an informal hallway discussion on the impact of the Internet on the freedoms we enjoy. Jeffrey Tucker is the CEO of Liberty.me, the publisher of Laissez-Faire Books, a faculty member at Acton University, and the closest thing I know to a digital Tom Wolfe. Jeffrey, welcome to the show.
So good to be here. Thank you.
Thanks for stopping by the YAL convention here in Washington. It's a delight to see you in person. I've been reading you for years and didn't even know it. But give us a little background. You've had an interesting trajectory as a writer and an opinionator.
Well, I began as just a normal economist guy, interested in economics. And I fell in love with digital technology in 1995 when the Internet was privatized. It opened up a whole world to us, right?
Yeah, it did. Changed everything.
And it was our new frontier. So I became a kind of a web builder, devoted to spreading of economic information and really any information. I fell in love with the idea of this free space. I mean, so much about
gatekeepers.
Right. Well, so much about the physical world has been wrecked, in so many ways. So, for goodness, here we have suddenly
pristine virgin territory.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Well, the history of humanity and the history of freedom really has always been about migrating from areas controlled by
Go west, young man.
Right, and also from the old world to the new world, and from the feudal world of the feudal lands to the cities. It's always been about migration, and so now in the 21st century we have a chance to migrate, and I wanted to facilitate that migration
into cyberspace.
Yeah, and that's what we've seen. I mean, I'm so fortunate to have lived from the beginnings of it all the way to the most advanced stage now. We started out with the messaging and the communications, and we moved to music and films, and now we've got money being invented on the internet. And now with 3D printing, the physical world itself is migrating. It's unbelievable.
It is pretty fascinating. I spent all that time helping build that infrastructure, trying to attract guys like you.
Yeah.
So it's nice to see it finally happening.
Well, I fell in love with this world, really, because it's a realm that unleashes the creativity of the human imagination in a way in which the physical world just can't really anymore. We're too frustrated with the physical world. The digital world, we see miracles happening every day.
And what's interesting is the reach. I think about college kids today doing research, and I compare that to my generation crawling into the library, even pre-Xerox machine, right?
Do you know, let me tell you something. Do you know that before 1995 or even before 2000, nobody knew a damn thing about anything?
Yeah. Let's be careful with that, right?
No, you compare the level of information we have now, it's unbelievable. I think we really need to start talking about the 20th century and every time before that is the Dark Ages, and this is the New Enlightenment. I mean, what we can know with just a click of a button on a little device we carry in our pockets compared to what it took you and I, when we were younger to get
amount of research.
We didn't know anything. Do you remember spending time in the library going through the Reader's Guide to Periodical Literature? There's practically the only way you could find out anything outside of your geographic region, really. And that in the newspaper and maybe, limited number of television stations. I mean, it's dreadful. I hate to even think about the past.
What it was
so grim.
like.
It was so grim compared to now, where we have so much knowledge pouring on our heads just every minute, and we can curate our worlds.
Yep.
We can develop our own communities without regard to geography. We have these peer-to-peer relationships we can establish with anyone in the world.
I stopped buying physical books. I was one of these book hoarders. When I remarried, I had to throw out 14 boxes of books. And I read only on the iPad now.
Congratulations.
And here's what's interesting about it. So I'm going to have someone like you on the show. I buy the most recent book on Amazon. I read it on my iPad. It's $9.95, and that's kind of nice, too. And I can highlight it, keep all the notes, and do a quick search and say, what was that clever thing this guy said I want to ask him about? And it's at my fingertips, even 2 years later. It's really amazing how it's changed.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that. I had this experience recently because there were several editions of a book I wanted to reread because I was doing a seminar on it, and I found that I had homesteaded one edition with notes and highlights and stuff like that.
Paper.
No, I mean a digital edition.
Oh, digital edition.
Right.
Oh, even
so
better.
I didn't want to download the new one. I searched for my old edition, and really, it was very much like reproducing that physical experience of having read a book and highlighted things.
Sure.
I wanted
the folded corners on the pages.
Yeah, I wanted my legacy digital edition of the one I had loved and read and marked up.
Isn't that funny?
It's so wonderful, isn't it? And yet now we can carry thousands of books with us in a little tiny space and travel all over the world with them. It's when I think back You think back about an aristocrat like Thomas Jefferson, you know.
What did he have access to?
His most prized possession was his books, of course, you know. And even going back
he
further.
He died broke, but he had his books.
Yeah, he had his books, and so he was a rich man, you know.
Yeah.
And then you look back at in the Middle Ages, you know. I mean, books took years to create. And really, the teams of monks and scribes before the Gutenberg Bible. And when invaders would come to the monastery, they wouldn't care about your physical property. They wanted your books.
Yeah.
That was the most valuable thing they had. And now look how rich we all are. Tens of thousands, even millions of books available for instant download at any budget.
But Jeffrey, how many young people are readers? They're spending their time on YouTube. They're spending their time on TV. How many actually take advantage of this wealth of knowledge?
Well, I agree with you that they should. However, I think we have the most literate generation in history. They're reading more and they're writing more than anybody else.
Certainly writing more because it's easier.
Yeah, it's easier. I think that there's not anything wasteful about Facebook.
It's not all
and
Shakespeare,
email.
though. I mean, a 140-character tweet is not a sonnet.
But it's not easy either. You've been on Twitter. It's not easy.
Yeah, it's hard. It's like a haiku, actually.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah. It's a skilled, and you have to be highly skilled as an editor and a writer to be able to conquer that Twitter space. It's difficult, actually.
It's getting crowded with code, which worries me. I mean, I'm looking at what % of a tweet is hashtags and @ signs and weird little acronyms.
But look, we're inventing new languages now. This is beautiful. It's wonderful.
It's hard to scan.
It is, but you know, the evolution of language and its progress is in a way the mirror of the progress of civilization itself. So we see this faster evolving language. It means that we're progressing as a people more quickly. Because we have new technologies, new ways of engaging people, we have to have new words for them, new codes, new signals, and I love it. It's really exciting to me. In fact, a couple of days ago, I spent some time on the Wikipedia page on with the code of emoticons because I feel like I'm falling behind. Like people are using
falling behind on emoticons,
right? And because people are using emoticons, I can't understand, right? So I went to the
you don't want to be an old fogey, right?
Exactly. So I went to the page and began to learn this new language. It was fun. We have to learn to be learners. We have to learn to open up our minds, live in the here and now, and embrace the new languages of our times. That's what keeps us young and living and part of the course of history. It's true.
So, Jeffrey, you've started a company called Liberty.me. Tell us about that.
Well, it's my dream come true, right? I mean, I've been working in this realm for basically 20 years. Mm-hmm. And within the last 18 months, new technologies came online that enable us to basically create a city in the cloud. And that's what I imagined. Virtualization plus multi-blogging, open source software. Everything came to be available, so I built it. I built Liberty.me. It's been open for 80 days. It's a sort of an unlimited publishing platform and social network for people who care about human liberty, basically. We distribute content. We have a lot of engagement with people on discussion forums and chat and messaging services, nightly classes.
So is it a community or is it a publishing business?
It's both. That's the cool thing about it. I eliminated myself as a gatekeeper to this community. I just wanted to have an open source forum and let it develop and evolve on its own, like a real city, except it exists in the cloud.
So there's no editor?
No, and you know, this is the funny thing because I was an editor for many years, you know, and here's what's funny and what I didn't entirely understand. As an editor, you're sort of sorting through whose writings you're going to publish and who you're not. Yeah. But what the writers are doing is not so much writing for the audience, they're writing for you.
To get past the gatekeeper.
Yeah, I'm the gatekeeper, so they're writing to flatter me, and it's not their real voice, so maybe not saying what they want to say. So when I built Liberty.me, I decided to remove myself as an editor and let any member post anything and let the members decide what the quality content is. And you know what? The content is better. In other words, I realized as an editor, I was part of the problem. And now that I've removed myself as the gatekeeper, I'm enabling the solution.
So how do you protect yourself from trollers and troublemakers and people who just want to come and piss in the well?
Okay. This is an easy one. I make sure everyone has skin in the game. It's a subscription service. So they're paying $4, $5, $6.
Oh, so you don't get drive-bys?
No, they're all paying a little bit of money. Not a lot, but just a bit to give them a sense of investment in the community. I realized this was important because I live in a subdivision where I live, and I went to a community meeting of the subdivision, right? This was, 15 years ago. Yeah. But an amazing thing happened at that meeting. We all gathered together, and there was a big argument about whether we should put shrubberies around the heater vents or something. It was something
right.
totally
it's like a condo committee meeting. Right. Oh, my God.
What was cool about it is that we had gathered hundreds of people with very different political ideologies. Everybody in the room had a different view about the way the world should work, but what were we talking about and what were we doing at that meeting? We all were unified in the same goal.
Trying to solve the same problem.
Solve the same problem and enhance the value of the property that
For
we
everybody.
all owned. And that was I was in the corner. I don't care about shrubberies, all right? But I watched this take place and I thought, look what you have here. Tremendous diversity that could be explosive, but it wasn't. It was a community of mutual cooperation and agreement on the essentials, and there you saw democracy actually work. And that burned into my brain. I thought, we should have societies like this.
It's hard to scale.
Well, not in the digital world. You can scale it infinitely. And that's what's beautiful about it. It wasn't even possible to do this 5-10 years ago.
I guess Wikipedia is an example of,
well,
of
it is.
one that's scaled.
Yeah, and with virtualization now, you can do this under a single subdomain and have infinite scalability. I mean, this is the way technological progress is going.
So Bitcoin remains in the news. Actually, we did a whole show on it not long ago. What a lot of the young Bitcoin enthusiasts don't seem to remember is this has come around before. David Chaum with the Anonymous Digital Cash in '94 kind of started the whole Liberty movement talking about digital cash and its impact. Where are we today with Bitcoin?
Well, we've solved most of the big problems. So the big problem, of course, was the double spending problem.
Right, and Mt. Gox went down, and how much money did they lose?
Well, they lost a lot of money, but that was just for bad security and bad management. I mean, I feel in a way kind of sorry for the kids who took over Mt. Gox, because when they took it over, they didn't realize it was going to become this big global, payment system and monetary system with such high valuations.
So back us up for listeners who are maybe not up to speed on Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Give us a bigger picture of where Bitcoin is.
Yeah, I will try to explain this, and let me just address one of the main objections to Bitcoin. People think, why does this crazy digital currency unit have any value at all? It's not backed by anything.
Even if it's mathematically secure and unique, it's still just fiat.
It seems as if some geek invented a money and threw it out there on the internet, and suddenly it had value. How does that work? We don't really understand it. But I think what people need to understand is some of the history. It was introduced in a white paper in October of 2008. The genesis block of the first Bitcoin came about in January of 2009. But it was fully 10 months before Bitcoin obtained any monetary value at all. And so the question is, why did that happen? Why the wait and why the value? And the answer is that the blockchain, which is the ledger, the distributed network of the ledger.
The shared ledger.
Right. Had to be sort of hacked on and used to see if it solved the essential mathematical problem of the double spending problem, to see if it was really a sound technology, a good protocol. Then after 10 months of exploration, experimentation, and hacking on it and pounding on it, checking the cryptographic levels on wallets and everything else of security, then once people were persuaded that the payment system was valuable, then the monetary unit attached to that payment system began to take on.
How many
value.
vendors are accepting it now?
Oh gosh, that it's maybe in the hundreds of thousands by now.
Wow!
And when I first got interested in this in February of 2013, there weren't that many. In fact, one of the first products I bought with Bitcoin was a pair of crimping pliers. I didn't need those crimping pliers. It just happened to be there, and I thought I would try it.
Give it a shot, see if they show up.
So here's a funny story, though. That when I obtained my first Bitcoin, I got 9 all in one dinner. And it was a dinner at which I sold 3 bow ties at 3 Bitcoin apiece. So you look at those prices now, that's like...
Your bow ties are worth $1,800, right? That's pretty funny.
So I came home with 9 Bitcoin, which I didn't think was a lot of money at the time, and I just started spending them on silly things just to test the network. But I tell you, the first time I used it, I held my QR code, my scanner, and scanned the code and sent the money. I realized this is the future. I put down my phone, I did a little dance around my dining room table because I thought, oh my God, money too is migrating to the digital age.
So there's a fork in the road for the Bitcoin community I'd like to ask you about. On the one hand, there are those that are looking for full commercial acceptance. They want to be integrated with the real-world banking system. And in order to do that, they have to comply with a lot of the bank secrecy laws, the regulations, the know your customer. And there's a group heading in that direction.
Sure.
And then there's a group of anarchists who are trying to be stateless, who want to be anonymous, who are pushing really hard to say, don't touch us with your regulations.
Black wallets and all the rest of it.
How can they do both?
Well, that's the beauty about Bitcoin. Both can happen. And I'm sympathetic with both sides. You know, I
They
try
have different
not,
objectives.
Well, they do. And I understand why vendors like BitPay and Mycelium and all the rest of these wonderful people, they're just looking to survive. They got regulators coming after them all the time. Of course, they're going to try to work with them. You'd rather have smart regulations than bad regulations.
It's no fun going to jail, too.
Yeah, right. So I get that, but I'm also very sympathetic with Cody Wilson's point of view, you know, this sort of crypto-anarchist movement. And I think both can equally exist. I don't see that really being a conflict. The beautiful thing about Bitcoin,
I mean, just like it does with physical cash, right? There is a black market.
There is. Well, I think that's true, and especially true in the digital realm. Nobody's in charge of Bitcoin, and that's what makes me most happy about it.
So, Jeffrey, one of the fields you follow is intellectual property law. How do you see that evolving?
Well, I don't think it has any future in a digital age. You know, the internet is just a big copying machine. That's it. Information has special qualities the physical world doesn't have. It's infinitely malleable. We've got a certain immortality that applies to information.
But I mean, trademarks have always been ephemeral. I mean, trademark is an idea. Trademark is not a thing. And yet they've survived for years. And in fact, they're being extended.
Yeah, but you know, the funny thing about trademarks is that even large industries are starting to learn that they benefit from private markets. You know that Nike does this all the time, right? And a certain season when they're releasing like 85 models of tennis shoes, they need to know which ones are popular and which ones they should invest a lot in inventory in. The only way you can know this is by immediately going to pirate markets
and see what they're
in
pirating.
Russia and China and Malaysia. Find out what the pirates like. Those are the
Make
ones
more
that are
of
going to
those.
expand. Right. So we've learned to use these pirate markets. Gucci does the same thing. They all do this. And so the large manufacturers have learned to use pirate economies as signaling mechanisms because pirates are smarter than consumers.
So what happens to the business model of inventors in a world in which intellectual property disappears?
Well, I think it's a beautiful world. You know, people have always overestimated the value of patents. Really, the only way to make money in this world, in the end, is to find something valuable and sell it to other people. Patents don't really do that. Sometimes they can lock in your gains. They don't cause profitability, though. They don't cause you to be a successful company.
No, but they do protect your margins from imitators.
They do, but sometimes that's bad. I mean, well, you really do want to compete as an enterprise. You want to face competition. I can tell you that, like, as a writer, one of the reasons I love Liberty.me is that I'm competing with thousands of other writers to stay on the front page of my own website. I like that. Competition is good for everyone. Monopolies are never good.
Yeah, but designing a new drug is very different than writing a column.
Well, that's a special kind of problem because we've got the regulators, you know, that are delaying drugs coming to markets 8 and 10 years. They're requiring disclosure of everything, you know, years before you're able to hit to market, so you lose your first mover advantage. In so many ways, patents are a kind of compensation, really,
for disclosure. Well,
of
course, that's from the very beginning. That's what patents are.
Yeah, so I think
as opposed to trade secrets, which is another way to protect your property.
That's right.
Just don't tell anybody what you're doing.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. So I would say that the patents over pharmaceuticals are a special case, but in most industries, we could just get rid of them, you know, completely and be better off. I have friends of mine that have spent so much money and so much time defending their intellectual property. They could have been actually innovating and bringing products to make it.
Yeah.
You know, I have a very good friend who owns the trademark to Moose Tracks ice cream. Do you know this ice cream?
Yeah, I've heard of it.
No, and he's a sweet guy, right? And he's always against me. He's can't stand me because I'm always attacking intellectual property. But look, he spends so much of his time suing Horse Tracks, you know, Moose Feet, you know,
right.
every kind of other name. And
go build your business.
Go build your business. And I was at Kroger the other day as a grocery store, and I saw they had a new ice cream called Happy Tracks. I Snapchatted a picture to him, and I said, "What are you going to do about this guy? You know, it's Happy Tracks. It's not even an animal.
Are you goading him? Oh, you're a bad boy." So, Jeffrey, I was browsing your material, refreshing my memory, and I came across your tirade against shaving cream.
Oh, God.
And I've got to ask you, because you've tempted me to give it a try, why is shaving cream a scam?
I am so embarrassed to say this is my most influential article I've ever written, and it's an attack on a consumer product,
I know.
which is so
which all of us have
funny.
used since we turned 14.
I know. I was at a dinner party many years ago, and some guy I barely knew just said in passing, I don't know why the topic came up, but he said, you know, shaving cream's a racket. And I thought, well, this guy is obviously insane, right? But a couple of days later, I thought, well, you know, maybe he's right. And I began to try shaving without the shaving cream, and everything improved. All the problems in my face, you know, the redness and the sores and the
not right away though. As I recall, you had to go through a retraining your skin period.
There's a 4 or 5 days period where you have to learn to do without. But no, I don't use it at all. And I tell you, practically every day. I get emails and comments. Even this morning, I went over to Reason Magazine for an interview. 3 guys
asked you about the shaving cream.
They said, I just want to thank you for liberating me from shaving cream.
You know, you've tempted me to give it a try because I'm on the road so much, I get tired of carrying shaving cream.
But, I set out to liberate humanity from the state. I've only achieved liberating people from shaving cream.
So, Jeffrey, as I get older, it's harder to not become more of a pessimist. It's one of the reasons why I like to be around young people. You seem to be aging gracefully and avoiding pessimism.
That is perfectly ridiculous. I can tell you, you are so wrong. You are so wrong.
Tell me why I should be an optimist.
We are surrounded by beautiful examples of what liberty has given us. I mean, the fact that I'm able to carry around a smartphone with all human knowledge in it, instantly accessible. And I can talk to anybody in the world. In the developing world, there are more smartphones than there are bank accounts, for example. All right? These are tools of liberation. Ever since the internet was opened up to us, we've seen the construction of a massive infrastructure that's the potential of which is just overwhelming.
So the geeks have set us free. Is that basically the message?
I think that's it. And also, look, let's face it, in the 20th century, we made a gigantic mistake.
It was a pretty bloody century.
It was, but it was a mistake of kind of top-down control, thinking that we could manage the whole of life through coercion and compulsion. It was a mistake.
Across the board, in fascism and communism and democracies, we all did that.
We all did it. Right. We can't look at Nazis and say, oh, well, look how stupid they were, or the communists and say, oh, that was dumb. We've all done it. But the point is this paradigm is changing. Those systems are breaking down one by one
or the other.
Yeah, and the cool thing is the market is inventing new and more useful things for us every day. And I think we're experiencing a paradigm shift.
Are we going to have to vote with our feet at some point?
Well, I'd like to believe that we can just vote by, migrating to the digital spaces rather than having to leave. There are more and more people leaving. I kind of regret that, though. I like the idea of sticking around and innovating, finding ways around the despotisms of our time. A do-it-yourself project. Let's make liberty something that belongs to us.
Find the cracks, work them, make them bigger.
It's like that movie Hunger Games. I don't know if you saw it. I think it's the movie Catching Fire. Somebody says to, the major protagonist of the thing, every system has a flaw. Every system has a flaw. And you just have to find it, aim the arrow in the right spot, and pull and shoot. Bam, you're done.
Good for you, Jeffrey. Thanks so much for coming by today and giving us your time for the show.
Okay, it's wonderful to be here. Thank you for having me.
That was Jeffrey Tucker, CEO of Liberty.me, here on Real Clear Radio Hour, brought to you by the Competitive Enterprise Institute. I'm your host, Bill Frezza, now broadcasting every week at this time on Bloomberg Boston and WROM Detroit. Next week, it's Back to the Land as we explore the unlikely convergence of GMO crops and organic farming and look at the curious case of local regulators trying to stomp out a family farm. See you next week.